Hey Trailblazers, welcome back to another episode 49. I'm Nan, this ESL Trailblazer. Let's make something happen. Boom. So, everybody wants feedback, but they don't want criticism. Everybody wants you to be honest with them, but they don't want criticism. Everybody wants you to be part of the team, but they don't want criticism. Let me put it to you this way. Try to be diplomatic and don't ever criticize. So that's my intro to giving polite criticism, because as some of you probably know, especially if you're English teachers, we English speakers, we're not very good at giving criticism. And there's a fine line between offending somebody, insulting them, or giving them something that's valuable. And what do we call that? Constructive criticism. Okay, vocabulary word, but I'll get to more of those expressions that you can use right after this message. Pow! And we're back. So as I was saying a moment ago, criticism and praise are very sensitive culturally, and depending on where you come from, the culture can have a real big impact on how you criticize and the way you praise, or if you do one or the other at all. Okay, so one of the most watched ESL Trailblazer videos is about this topic, softening and politeness. You can check it out right here, episode 1, and I'm following episode 1 up with this episode because there's a lot more to say with regards to polite criticism, which is the topic of this episode. So as I've mentioned before, but just to reaffirm this, the thing is that the culture really establishes this. So living in Poland, I've noticed that you grow up with criticism. Parents and teachers are very critical of students and kids as they're growing up for the performance. They want them to do better, and they feel like the way to motivate them is to criticize, to get them to, perform better. Okay, so it's not good enough. This is not going to cut it. You need to work harder. You need to perform better, etc., etc. Okay, whereas the English-speaking culture and countries, we are scared of criticism, and we are raised with a lot of praise and positive reinforcement from parents and teachers. Oh, that's great. Keep up the good work. Well done. That's fantastic. Wow, great. Yeah. And as a result, us English speakers, we struggle with giving criticism, and that's why there's this lesson, polite criticism, okay? Because we are masters at polite criticism, us English speakers, okay? And the thing is, Polish people, they struggle with praise. They don't know how to give it, or if they do, they give it very rarely, okay? That's whether you're a teacher or, a boss to your staff. So I think this lesson can be valuable because there are some expressions, if you're learning English, you might be able to use some of them if you're struggling with this. And it doesn't matter if you're an English speaker, maybe this can be also helpful to you just as a reminder, because, hey, we need to make sure that we don't insult, offend, or be too harsh or aggressive when we want to criticize something, okay? There's always a little bit of sensitivity here. So, without further adu, let's get right into it. So I want to start with some collocations. I already mentioned a couple expressions at the beginning of this lesson. Remember, I said constructive criticism, and I also mentioned an expression, for softening, which was, you remember what it was? I said, let me put it to you this way, okay? So when you say, let me put it to you this way, you want to soften or be diplomatic with what you say instead of being really harsh, like, oh, I can't stand her, I can't wait for her to leave the office. So if you say, let me put it to you this way, we're not going to miss her, or I'm not going to miss her, okay? Let me put it to you this way, I would never watch that film again. I wouldn't watch it again, okay? Instead of saying that film sucked. All right, so there are two, but let's keep going. Collocations first. So you can say that to be strongly criticized, to be severely criticized, to be widely criticized, or sharply or heavily criticized. So those are bam, 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 bam. I just hit you with a whole bunch of expressions right there. And the reason I did that is because all of them are very practical and useful, okay? Politicians can be widely criticized or severely criticized. Celebrities, famous people that we know for an action or something they say. But you know, the government can be strongly criticized for an action that they took, or the company, the employees might say this about the company, etc., etc. Again, very useful. And we also have fierce criticism. There was fierce criticism towards this person, the government, the company, etc. Okay? So those are your collocations right there. I tried to get through them as fast as possible. Let's get to the expressions. You ready? Let's do it. You're wrong. That's wrong. Okay? Your products are expensive. All right? This is terrible. Right? So those are some harsh criticisms, but we can change those very negative words by just using a more positive word with not before it, okay? So for my example, which is you're wrong or that's wrong, you can say, that's not quite right. Or with all due respect, that's not quite right. Or with respect, that's not quite right. You see what we love to do as English speakers? It's not quite right. Quite, like we have to add quite in there, okay? But what we really mean is, that's wrong. Okay, so now you know what we really mean when we use those expressions if you're learning English as a second language. But also remember, it's going to sound a lot less strong if you use that option rather than just saying that someone is wrong. Okay, if you're saying that some companies' products are expensive, you don't want to say that directly, right? You want to say, yes, but your products are not cheap. They aren't cheap. Okay. So you're making that criticism, but you're using a more positive word, a less aggressive one, okay? And, well, if you want to say something really negative, instead of using that method, you can say something like, I found it to be. Now, it can be anything, yeah? I found the lecture to be boring. I found the film to be unsatisfying or not interesting. Okay, I found this to be. That can be a diplomatic way of softening the criticism instead of saying, it wasn't interesting. I didn't like it at all. Okay, I found it to be quite dry and slow. I'm talking about a film now. Okay, so that's one expression. Let's go to the next one. With all due respect. Now, I mentioned before this one just a moment ago, but I want to emphasize it one more time. When you say with all due respect, you're going to be using this in the context of a formal meeting or someone who's above you in rank, like a boss, who you have a disagreement with and you want to say or criticize, and you have to, before you say it, you have to start with this, with all due respect, okay? That is 100% definite in English. I don't know how you do it in your language. I'm not even sure how they do it in Polish, to be honest. I'm gonna have to ask my students this upcoming week about that, because that's something that might be even the same in your language, okay? So the next one is my concern is, or my concern would be. So imagine you're in a meeting or you're discussing something with friends where you're going to go on vacation, okay? My concern is that this destination will be too expensive and we won't have a lot of money to do any excursions, okay? Or you're hiring someone in a business context, okay? My concern would be, hypothetical, would be, that means you haven't hired them yet. Or my concern is, if you're about to, or maybe the decision has already been made and now you're reviewing it, okay? My concern would be that this person's personality would not fit. They're qualified, however. Okay, so that brings me to the next one, which is to be fair. All right, when you say to be fair, you're using that sandwich approach that one of my students told me about this week, actually. I didn't even know they called it the sandwich approach. But the sandwich approach means that you put a criticism between two compliments, okay? So you say something negative, but then you say to be fair, and you say something positive, okay? So my concern is that this person's personality is not going to fit well in the company. To be fair, they are overqualified for this position, so they have all the credentials, okay? I really wish I hadn't used that example now, because it's not a good one. I think the sandwich approach works better, and this expression, to be fair, works better when you're facing that person that you're giving criticism to, or the feedback. Or if you're a teacher and you're giving a feedback for a teacher observation, you give the compliment and then you say, you give the negative thing, but then you say to be fair, okay? So if you're a teacher and you're giving feedback to another teacher, a better example might be, you really didn't explain to the students this language point very well. To be fair, they were very disruptive and loud, and I think a lot of teachers would have trouble with this type of group. Okay, so right there, that's a better example. I feel better now. Whew. Okay, I don't mean to put a downer on things, or I don't mean to put a downer on it. So your opinion has been asked, you want to contribute to the group, and you don't want to put a downer on it, and then you give the negative information, bad news, whatever that is, okay? You can think of any example, whether it's a meeting or a party, or, you know, you're having fun, and now you have to mention something that's not really pleasant to hear, okay? It may be a little, okay? Or, yes, I'm not sure about it. Those are my last two expressions before we finish up, okay? So, I am not sure about it, and it may be a little. Those are ways, again, for English speakers to soften something using a modal verb like it may be. Alright, it may be, meaning like I don't like it at all. It may be too expensive. It may be too stuffy, this room that we want to rent. It means it's too stuffy. That's what it really means, okay? But we want to soften it, so we say it may be, alright? Or the other one, I'm not sure about it, to be honest. I'm not sure about it, okay? That means I'm definitely sure, and it's a big no, alright? It's a strong no, alright? But we don't like doing that, so we say, I'm not sure about it, to be honest. Classic. Okay, and I want to finish on that classic one. I hope you found the language useful. I think this is a very important language point, functions that can be taught to your students. I don't have a lesson idea straight out for you, but watching this video is one start to get the language, maybe incorporate it in some other lesson. Don't forget about the Freshen Up Fridays newsletter coming up on Friday. Fresh lesson ideas, a teaching blog. Check it out, subscribe, and you have a great week, teachers. I've really enjoyed this episode. I love your feedback. I'm Nandis, signing out, ESL Trailblazer. Let's make something happen. Build that momentum. Have a great week. Be proud, teachers, and thank you for watching. It's all about you.